Hey everyone, welcome to CraftQuest on Call. I'm Ryan Ireland, and we are live for another edition. This is episode number 21, and in this one we have a few things to cover. We have your questions, of course, submitted questions, and then questions also from the community via Stack Exchange. Question about frustrations with the two-step publishing workflow. We have how non-admin users can preview entries when the front end is disabled, writing a custom console command, and troubleshooting slow performance. So hopefully we can help out or at least fill some airtime with our thoughts on those topics. But Andrew, we're also going to talk about how many lines of code are in the Craft CMS source code. And I'm going to make you guess. And then Andrew is going to show us his make files. We're going to go retro back to 1988 and learn about Andrew's make files. And then Tyler is back for another edition of Tyler's Tip. So, Andrew, thanks for joining me again. How are you doing?
I'm Andrew Welch from NY Studio 107. And Ryan, it is not 1988. We're going back to the mid 1970s is when Makefiles are originally from. However, I find your comments to be very rude, disparaging, non-inclusive, and non-diverse because Makefiles are used to build stuff that you use every single day. They are still in use today. They are not, just because they're old, there's no ageism here, Ryan. Just because it's been around a long time doesn't mean it's no good, okay? As someone who has now been around for a long time, I'm very offended.
I was born in the mid 1970s, so I don't think I'm as old as you, but we're both in middle age. But I wanted to mention, so last time on the live stream, Andrew, I had a series of Rickrolls that I dropped into the live stream, much to your amusement.
Very rude. Very rude, yes.
And speaking of rude, what was actually rude was that the overlords at YouTube sent me a notice letting me know that I violated copyright by including those in the live stream. And so I had to take them out. But it's interesting. Do you know YouTube, when you get a copyright claim against a video, they have this tool where they go through the video, they identify all the instances of that copyright infringement, and they give you a tool and say, from this timestamp to this timestamp, this one to this one, this one to this one. And so I had I must have done it like 6 times. So there's like a list of like 6 things. And they say, would you like to like unpublish the video, et cetera, et cetera. And one of them was like, here's the listing, just remove, like have us remove them. And they'll actually go in and remove them from the video for you based on those timestamps. It's a pretty sweet setup, and obviously made it a little bit easier. I am disappointed.
You deserve it. You deserve every minute of it, Ryan. Every minute of pain that was caused to you by all those annoying Rickrolls with my head floating around. You deserve every little bit of it, okay?
Yeah. I think I was probably laughing for a good solid hour after that live stream. So I had a good time. Anyway, but let's jump into the questions, and because we have a lot to cover. We have 2 features. One is the thing with the number of lines of source code. And then we're going to talk about your make files. And we can't forget about Tyler. So let's jump into our first question. And let me bring up my desktop. All right. This one is courtesy of Stack Exchange. Actually been a lot of activity on Stack Exchange. This person says that they're attempting to clone a Craft CMS version 3.3. So this is like pretty early in the Craft 3 version into a new local. What was the jump? Was it 3? There was a jump. Was it 3.5? There was something where there was a lot of like plugin updates and stuff. But or is it 3.4? I don't remember. Anyway, but they wanted to basically, they had this on production. The site on production was kind of getting cobwebby, and they wanted to pull it down and get it running locally, and ran into all sorts of issues. So they're having all sorts of problems with like plugins not working and stuff like that. So I wanted to kind of back up and say, if we've talked about this before, like what would you do when you inherit an old project? So let's pretend that this person is inheriting the old project and they need to actually pull down from production to get started again, to clone a GitHub repository. Let's say that that hasn't been actively maintained in a while. It sounds like to me is what's happening here is that when they're running it, Craft is trying to, or Composer is trying to update all the packages, because it says they're running into like, I'm having issues with Composer asset plugin in several tables, and all sorts of stuff here. But anyway, I wanted to this is a bit of an old version of Craft, but if I just wanted to run the old version as it is, a git clone should let me do that in a Composer install. Well, that, as long as my composer.lock file is correct, right?
Yep.
But if my composer.lock file has newer versions, then I'm going to be hosed.
Yeah, but I mean, if they're cloning this down from, I'm hoping it's coming from a Git repo somewhere, or are they actually just copying it down?
I don't know if cloning is actually like git clone or copying the files down.
So here's why I'm hoping that, and I think we've touched on this before, is that if you're doing this stuff just manually, you may or may not get everything. Whereas if you were pulling it down via the Git repo somewhere, you know what you're getting, right? So there's no chance you're not getting the composer.lock file because you know it's in there. But okay, so let's just take it at face value. Let's just say that they're
not getting the composer.lock file. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That could be possible. So, all right, let's say we're having trouble. Although present in the database dump are not available on the local site. Templates work fine. My cloning process, which used to work now, is failing. Okay. I think what we're missing here, Ryan, is we don't know what his cloning process is. His or her, sorry. We don't know what their cloning process is. So that makes it difficult to know what's going on. But if stuff is out of sync, it makes me think that maybe they're not really copying everything that they think they're copying. Because they're saying that some tables are present in the dump, but not on the local site. I mean, that says to me that they're not restoring that dump locally somehow.
This
so maybe they're
a process issue than anything, maybe.
Yeah, and this is why I love automating things like this, is I don't want there to be anything, oh, I forgot that step. You know what I mean? There should be an automated way that just pulls the database and sucks it in. But if it's in the dump, but not in your local dev environment, my guess is that's where the problem is, right?
That's what I think too. So generally, when you inherit a site like this, and if this person isn't in Git version control yet, that would be step one. And then to assess, do I have a composer.lock file? What version of Craft is it pegged against? It sounds like 3.315, but honestly, it sounds like the process here is a little bit all over the place, and that might be why things are kind of unpredictable here.
Because we don't know certain things, let me just tell you what I would do in a case like this. Because I have had this happen where people have said, companies have said, well, we've got this site, we got rid of our developer, and which is sometimes a red flag. But anyway, and we want to do something with this site. Can you do something with it? And I'll say, well, do you have it in a Git repo somewhere? And hopefully they will, but there have been cases where they don't. So my process is that I'll clone the entire site down via the Git repo or Beanstalk or whatever storage mechanism they're using for their Git repo. And I will ensure that the composer.lock is there, because that's going to tell me what should be in the composer install so that it matches what's in the database. And then I will pull the database down, restore that locally, and then I'll take a look at any .env files that they have on their server, and I'll copy those down locally too, and then make whatever changes need to be made for the local dev setup for it. And then I'll just try and get it up and running. And the idea is to have everything from the working environment copied down locally, couple of tweaks to make sure it works in whatever your local dev environment, and then just try to get that up and running. If something doesn't work, you're probably missing something in terms of some piece of it that is not coming down. And, at least from their description, I mean, it sounds like they're grabbing the database, but they're not properly updating that in their local dev environment. And because they're talking about different versions of Composer, I mean, they're talking about Craft 3.3315 or whatever. That is before Composer 2 came out. So I would just keep it at Composer 1, pull that stuff down.
Because if you switch to Composer 2, there's an order of operations you have to do. I think the plugin installer, there was an issue. So you really you want to update that first before you do everything else. So
yeah.
Anyway, if this person ends up watching, I would actually hop on a live stream if they would let me and do this entire thing live with them. Because I think it would be interesting to do just to see what's going on. This is the kind of stuff that I like. I've moved so many like old sites over into Craft or updated that it's interesting to me to troubleshoot these issues.
Yeah, and again, the real problem here is there are certain things that we don't know, and they're important things that we don't know, you know? But my feeling is that a lot of the problems that they're running into probably stem from not having an automated way to do what they're trying to do. And they're kind of manually piecemealing doing some of it and probably just missing. And it's so easy to miss just one or two steps. I do it all the time. That's half the reason I automate stuff is I don't want to screw up, you know?
Yep, I agree. All right, good stuff. Let's jump into the next one. This one might be a little controversial, but I'll hang you out there and let you take the hits.
I mean, what did I do?
All right, here we go. Someone is asking, hey, is there a way to disable the two-step publish workflow that came in Craft 3.6? And this is the workflow that requires first publishing the draft, then saving in order to get back to the entries list. Is there a way of overriding that functionality, maybe with hooking into an event or something like that and fixing it? Do you know what I'm talking about? I can bring it up.
I do, but you probably should show people. I think it should be useful to show people.
So there's a lot of work in how drafts work, and then some rework based on feedback as well. But the general idea here is when you create a new entry, you don't mind the fields, and you put in some content and then it used to be that you could just save and publish, and then you'd be brought back to the list of entries. But right now, if I publish the draft, that is now live. What's that?
I was going to tell you to stop right there because, you know, there have been, ever since the drafts functionality kind of came out, which was a result of needing headless live preview.
Right.
There have been constant changes to it, and I have been there in my own CMS, and I have faced those two buttons where it's like save it, and I'm just like, I'm not really sure which one I'm supposed to click now. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just because of the sheer number of times that it has changed, you know?
So this one is, this post I just created, this is live, but I'm not brought back. Now I can click save, and that brings me back to the list of entries. What this person is asking is, when I create a new entry, I want to click publish and then go back to the list of entries.
Now, what if you click just the red button? Don't click the gray button. What if you click the red button first now? What happens?
It goes back, but that's only a draft now.
Right. And that's what they don't want, right? They want to be able to click it and have it live.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the only other options are save. Well, let me go back, because sometimes these change based on context. But maybe not here. So save and continue editing, or publish and then add another. But they would like a third option, which is publish and then return back to the list.
I don't think they want another option, Ryan. I think they want less options. I think what they want is no drafts and just a little button that says save, like there was before. You know, I think that's what they want. Yeah.
So I would ask two things. One is that the person that submitted the question to Stack Exchange this is obviously something you'd want to write in as a feature request. And then also,
there is one, trust me.
Oh, I'm sure there's one. Or maybe thumbs it up, or just, you know, or whatever, or ask for guidance. How can I work around this myself? Well, that's what I'm going to ask you, Andrew, is just off the top of your head, is there an event that allows us to like hook in and change these buttons here so they can maybe remove an option or something like that?
Oh, it's not that easy, Ryan.
Okay.
It's not even close to that easy. So I mean, this is a fundamental feature that has been baked into it, but it's interesting because it's only for entries. So
Mm,
categories and some other things that you can live preview still use the old live preview system.
right.
And I think still use the old draft system. I'm not sure actually, because it's been different depending on which version of Craft that you're using. You are not going to be able to just go in there and say, "Oh, I don't need this draft functionality." However, there have been a number of discussions about this that a lot of people have had issue with it, quite frankly, in terms of, it's just a little more complicated. There are lots of people like me or just people that own their own individual site that they're like, I'm never publishing a draft, right? I just don't need that. Give me a way to turn this off. And I think that is one of the reasons why there is going to be a Craft 3.7 is because, Brandon, he's really good about listening to people and what people are having problems with. They have had to tweak this thing over and over again. And I think they're going to try to finally get the workflow nailed to the point where you can have an option that you can just turn it off if you don't want the drafts at all. And I think that would actually be a really good option to have. Currently, that is not in there. I am not speaking for Pixel and Tonic. I'm not speaking for Brandon. I'm not speaking for anybody. But I do believe that is what their goal is to be able to have in Craft 3.7 the ability to just turn that off. So anyone who doesn't need the drafts feature or they have users that are confused by it because they just don't use it, I'm pretty sure that they're going to have that in there. And Sean Smith is saying it should be off by default. I mean, maybe, I don't know. It's hard to get past my own bias because I'm used to, from using Craft for so long, I'm used to it not being there. And then when it got added and then it was changed so much over time, like I don't really know what the right answer is in terms of whether it should be on or off. But definitely, I think there should be a way to turn it off because if you don't need drafts, or at least have it function in such a way that it doesn't intrude or get in the way so that they can have that one-click button to do what you're talking about,
Yeah. Like I publish stuff onto my Craft site almost daily, and I actually kind of like the this where the save draft button has become the prominent button, and the one that Command S now basically took over. So that's save drafts. That's not published because I do a lot of writing ahead and like queuing up like a new course and just kind of like, just the basic parts of a course before all the videos are done or before everything's exported. And a Command S is nice. It feels safer than accidentally publishing something. So I wonder.
You know what I do?
Go ahead.
You know what I do, which maybe is just because I am a dinosaur and I predate them having drafts. But when I'm publishing stuff that I'm working on, I just hit that little checkbox that says disabled or whatever it is in the CP. You know what I mean? Like I just did it when I was working on an article. Every article that I work on, every podcast that I work on, and that's really the content that I personally publish when I'm not working on sites for other people.
Mm-hmm.
I just set that little enable checkbox to off, and that's what I use while I'm working on it. And then when I think the article is done or the post is ready to go, then I flick the enabled and then it goes back,
Yeah.
So it does
chat,
seem like there's overlapping functionality between drafts and enabled or not. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, like before something's published, yeah, but post publish, no, probably not. But in the chat, Alfredo said, he said, I have this feeling of Craft 3 being like Craft 2, but with extra steps in some ways. He wrote in and it was kind of a similar vein, expressing some frustration with like some of the extra steps that have been introduced in different places. He'd like it to be via config rather than adding extra dev into the code. So yeah.
And I put a link in the chat for the big issue that people are discussing on the draft's functionality. So there is a big open issue. If you want to weigh in or whatever, I'm sure we'll put it in the show notes. And I
Yep.
also put it live in the chat for anyone that wants to
Great.
get a look at it. I mean, I agree. Like, if you're going to add additional steps, make it optional because maybe people don't need it. But I guess what I was trying to express before is before there were drafts, I was using enabled or disabled kind of as a draft functionality. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So while I'm still working on the draft of this thing, I'm just going to disable it. It does kind of feel to me that there is some overlap between those functionalities because a draft is never published, right? So a draft is inherently never enabled, you know? And I just think that some of this has grown a little bit organically and just needs to be rethought a little bit so that it makes a whole lot of coherent sense and so that the workflow is simple and easy for people to do, content authors to do the type of stuff that they need to do every day. Now, some people do need drafts every day,
Right.
but a lot of people don't, right?
So maybe there
there's
should
got to
be
be
two,
some
like,
happy medium.
in craft, you can say, I want simple editorial process. I want, like, you know, more complex editorial process. One that the simple one just doesn't do the whole draft thing. It just save, publish, and go. I don't know.
And Andrea is touching on something that I think is the other problem with this is that, and again, this is to Pixel and Tonic's credit because they're trying to get this right. So they've been tweaking it for a long time, but there have been constant changes to this very core functionality of craft. And it is difficult to keep up with the training for your clients if, you know, every couple of months the functionality of the publish and draft buttons change slightly. It can be a little bit rough, you know? It can be a little bit rough.
I agree. All right, let's jump into a quick mention here of some CraftQuest updates. Wanted to share some of the recent additions to the catalog. So I've been focusing, those of you that are subscribed or get the regular emails know that I've been focusing a lot on introducing more people to learning how to extend craft. And one of the things I want to highlight is the My First Craft CMS module. I think the title was your idea, Andrew. And this introduces people to a really easy way to get into extending craft for things like what I was asking, hey, can we just, you know, hook into an event and replace this button? But there are events that allow you to add things into the control panel. And in this course, we actually learn how to add in a navigation items on the sidebar of the control panel. Great for author experience or for customization for a client if they want to get right to a certain view from all pages in the control panel. And we learned that in this course. We also have a kind of building on that. We learned how to extend Twig with a Twig filter and function. And again, this is all about introducing people who have not done this to the idea of doing this and showing that there's not a ton of code that it takes to get there. Obviously, it depends on the type of filter and Twig function that you want to build. But in this one, I shoot back at Andrew for his charcuterie board shenanigans last year, where we were demonstrating how the types work in TypeScript, and he refused to allow anything with the type of veggie onto his charcuterie board. So this one, actually, we built a Twig filter called Plantify that takes, you can pass in some text and it removes any non-plant ingredients from the text and replaces them with plant-friendly ingredients. So if you want to check out how to build that and start to build your own extensions for Twig or filters, Twig extensions, basically filters or functions, you can check that out.
How do we add the salami, though? How do we add the salami to this thing?
We don't. I have it removed. And then finally, last week, I released one on building a craft dashboard widget. And I don't know if widgets are popular with people, but I think they can be really helpful, especially for clients if you set it up right. And in this one, we build what I call deprec notifier. It's a simple widget that notifies you in a big number in the widget of how many deprecation errors you have. And then with an easy button that gets you over to the list to troubleshoot further. So again,
I remember someone saying in chat, Ryan, has anyone made the dashboard actually useful?
Right.
Because the default dashboard in Craft, like, you know, it'll display some news and some other stuff, but for the most part, like people just use it as a way to spring to another place, or kind of like it's
Yeah,
this
and there's a
weird
plugin that lets you
interstitial
avoid the
thing.
dashboard altogether too, right?
Yeah.
That completely avoids it. So you can make it useful. The default stuff isn't
Right.
like Craft News isn't super helpful for clients.
Right.
So I know some people have like agency specific modules that give the tech support just for the agency if you're in a retainer situation where, and they remove the craft support because that can be confusing. But if you want to learn how to build your own widget, check out this course. It's honestly, if you can get the framework up and running, then if you can write HTML and CSS, then you can build a widget, assuming that it's just going to have basic functionality. So
And that's how it's going to tie it in, Ryan, is that using this course, you could actually pretty simply build a few widgets for whatever your particular client does very often.
Absolutely.
And you could actually make the dashboard useful for them, right?
Yeah. Yep. And that's the whole idea. So I structured the course to be friendly to people that are new to extending craft. That's the whole idea behind it. So I want to encourage you to check out those courses. All right, Andrew, let's jump into something that I am going to ask you about. Do you remember when you were a kid, let's say elementary school, and your school had a fair, or you had a county? Did you have county fairs? You guys had county fairs up in the Northeast. We had them all the time, right? Petting zoo.
Not really.
No, real estate agents. So anyway, there is always this jar of jelly beans, and you had to guess how many jelly beans are in the jar, and then the winner, of course, gets the jar of jelly beans. As a parent, I now know that I do not want a jar of jelly beans at my house, and so I do not want to win. But as a kid, I definitely wanted to get that jar of jelly beans. So I want to do a version of that, but this time I want to do it with the Craft CMS source code. And I want you, Andrew Welch, to guess. And if people in the chat want to drop their guess in now without any cheating, how many lines of source code are in the core Craft CMS? So in the CMS repository, PHP only. So no like asset files like JavaScript or anything like that. PHP only. How many lines of source code do you think are there?
I might have done something before you said no cheating.
All right, go ahead.
278,786.
That's not actually
That's just
right.
a guess, though.
Yeah. I'm curious what your technique was, because I have a different number, so we'll have to compare now.
All right. So I will give you a link to my number that I got.
So does anyone else have a?
Sorry, I ruined it. I couldn't just like lie after I'd already ran it. So.
Oh, nice. Okay, so let me click through and see what this one is real quick.
So the tip that I found is basically you just use a Unix find command, and as the name you pass in .php, and then you do a line count on any of those files with the WC utility, and then you sort it, and then it gives a grand total at the bottom. And so that's where the number of lines of code came from.
All right. I told you not to cheat. Oh, okay. Ben says 900,000.
Yeah.
2.4 million from Joe. 650,000 from Alfredo. Andrea says 100 million. I think Andrew. Have you never watched Jeopardy? You're supposed to get closer but not go over. You're doing the opposite here.
You didn't tell anyone that. That's not fair.
Luke says 266,360. I think Luke is cheating too.
Insider info.
Yeah, Luke, you don't get to. Come on, Luke. You can't win. You're like you work for the company.
Yep.
All right. So let's see. So this is what I'm doing. I'm in the develop branch, and I'm using. So there's this Git command called ls files. It's basically like ls, but it's within the Git working tree. Is this what you did, Andrew?
Nope.
Okay. And then, this is how I'm doing it. I've cloned the Craft CMS, the CMS repository. I'm on the develop branch, which is the default branch in the repository. And then I'm basically ls files. That gives me a list of all the files, and then piping that through grep for only PHP, and then piping that through xargs, which then pushes me to, I can get the WC for word, or I guess line count in this case.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going to find all the PHP files, list them out with the line counts for each, and then sum them at the bottom. All right, I have 302,388. This is including tests. I'm not sure if that, did you include tests?
Should be, yeah.
So I got 302,388. So I'm about 40 something thousand off from what you and Luke have. Do you have the same as Luke?
You're also on the develop branch. I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
What other branches are there though? Oh, I only have develop.
Well, there's, yeah.
I guess I could
You know.
fetch. What would I fetch? Like 3.6?
I think it's close enough. I mean, here's the thing though. Like, this is also going to count comments, right? So all it's doing is a simple line count,
Right.
which I don't think is wonderful, you know? I don't know.
Comments are code, right?
Are they though?
I mean, yeah.
They're kind of like footnotes, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, for me, footnotes or endnotes are some of the most important part of like a book or an article.
But also, I feel like you're being exclusionary once again, Ryan. You're doing it again. JavaScript is a valid language that makes up a pretty decent chunk of the Craft code base. Actually, you know what? Count how many lines of use. Modify the thing that you just did for counting code, and let's see how much JavaScript and .vue. Like, see how much we got.
Let me just see JavaScript here. 41,000 lines of JavaScript.
You're gonna discount 41,000, Ryan? That's a lot of code, man. That counts, right? How dare you? All right, try Vue now. Probably not gonna be that many. Probably not that many.
5,800.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. The lesson here is get ls files. Very handy.
Very nifty.
All right. Let's move on to some
I'm
more
sorry
questions.
I cheated. I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to look.
I wouldn't expect anything else from you, Andrew. That's
yeah, that's the Stack Overflow article that
that's
I
the
copied
one that
and
Andrew
pasted.
used to cheat.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, so did you use find? Okay, you used find. After
Yeah,
the
scroll
live
down
stream,
to the first answer.
yeah.
There you go.
After the live stream, I'm going to look at the difference in the results between find and get ls files. I'm curious about that. All right.
Yeah, I don't know either. Does get ls files, is it count? Well, that doesn't make sense. I was going to wonder if it counted things that aren't in there anymore, but that wouldn't make any sense because they wouldn't be in your working tree.
Right. All right, next question. Trouble with the custom command, and a custom plugin. How do I do it? All right, so Andrew, this person is, they're trying to create a, I assume this is a console command. And let's actually generally explain, like, what is a console command in the context of a Craft plugin or a Craft module?
So a console command is something that you can run via the CLI, as the name implies, and you'll do PHP craft and then the command name. Under the hood, a console command is really just a controller. So it's very similar to a web controller. And it just has a little bit of special functionality in terms of the way that it works. But, for a lot of things, so for instance, a lot of my plugins have console commands for doing lengthy operations or things you might want to run via cron, that type of thing. And that's all it is, really.
And are these the commands that appear via the craft command then, or are they different?
Yeah, they're what appear via PHP craft. It's what appears there. Yeah.
All right, so, oops, wrong place. There we are. So PHP Oh, I'm in
Uh-oh.
dev mode. That's in what, the CMS directory?
Yep.
All right, so we're talking about all of these commands, and as a plugin developer or even via a module, you can register your own console commands.
Right.
So what
But
is
you're running this via your local machine, so you're not going to see any of those.
I'm not going to say any of what?
You shouldn't see any of the custom commands from plugins.
Oh,
because you're running
why
it from
not?
your local machine, right? So
Okay.
you're not actually connected to the dev mode runs inside of Docker containers, right? So you're not going to
got
see. It's not going. It can't connect like you're running it from the wrong place. But
All right.
no. Well, this kind of leads into what we're doing. So go back to where you were before.
Yeah.
This is going to be a teaser for what we're going to do in a little bit.
Okay.
And type go back one level to the root of the project, and then type make craft, and just hit return. Oh God.
Oh, I have
Yeah.
1 second.
Oh yeah, you had Nitro up and running. Okay.
Yeah.
My goodness.
All or nothing.
Yeah, that's
All right.
So if you type make craft, it will run whatever command you want inside of there.
So
and actually, since it wasn't.
Yeah, and so then I can actually have access. So this person is asking that they can't get their, so they followed they've scaffolded a plugin via Plugin Factory, which you created, with console commands.
Therefore, I'm obligated to fix every problem that people have.
Anytime someone mentions something you created, that's a question that comes up on the show somehow. I'm not sure how that works. So anyway, the plugin, okay, shows up fine. However, I can't get the new command to display in the terminal when I do PHP craft. Do you think that's why? Do you think they're...
Do I think what is why?
Like that the environment isn't running or something like that?
Well, I mean, no, not necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you go into there and then type,
It's weird people don't put it in the root like that. Like a normal project. All right, what is one that you have?
But you're running it from the local environment again.
Oh, right. What do I have to run then?
So go to the root. Go to the project root. And
is it make craft?
Type.
Oh, no.
Just make craft. Yeah, it should be all that you need to do.
Oh, but it's web perf. Here you go. Here's one.
Yeah.
So why does that not appear?
Right. So if I was to guess,
okay.
If I was to guess, and I'll give you a link to a piece of code that you can open up. If I was to guess, maybe he or she doesn't have the code in there to set the namespace for console controllers. What I think. So if you open up that little link that I sent you in Discord, and probably zoom it up so people can read it. So basically, it's saying if this is a console request, change the controller namespace to the console controller. And if I was to guess, that would probably be why it's not appearing.
Okay. Yeah.
It's hard to say, like, without the code, it's one of those things where, why doesn't this work? I'm like, I don't know. So this is actually a good tip. So if you want good input, whenever you ask a question, if you have code that's not working, put it in a gist somewhere.
Right.
Or put it somewhere public that you can link to and say, here's the code, because you're much more likely to get people that are going to be able to answer it in a helpful way, Otherwise, it has to be a back and forth where people are like, well, I don't know, let's see the code, because it could be any number of things. Like, I'm not really sure what it is. It could be that they added it after the fact and they didn't do a composer dump auto load, so the namespace isn't there. Like, it could be any number of things, But my
Got it.
guess is that it might be that.
Yeah, Luke says it sounds like their module is not being loaded by Composer and bootstrapped in the Craft app. I think this person's using a plugin, but that was the first thing that I thought too, was they're probably not bootstrapping it, so it's not even available.
It could be, but I thought they said in their question that it was working. Maybe I misread it.
Let's see.
But they're
Yeah, it says the
saying,
plugin shows up fine in the Craft UI, so I installed.
yeah, therefore it must be in there. So that's
Right.
why I'm thinking it's the namespace thing, you know?
Okay.
Or the controller name. It's what I'm assuming it probably is. Or they added this console command after the fact, and Composer doesn't know anything about that, so you need to do the Composer dump auto load.
Yeah, you got to
pull in the
rebuild
namespace of the new stuff. Yeah, it's probably one of those two, but
yeah, you only go on that hunt once or twice before you remember to, anytime you add a new class or something like that, or anything where Composer has to auto load, that you need to rebuild those files.
And Ben Croker says on this topic, as per Ryan's insistence that comments are code, console command comments are generated from the method docblock comments, and that is correct. So if he doesn't have it, yeah, well, all right.
Code.
So make sure that your console commands have some documentation in there too.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Ben. I'm going to assume, Ben, that you're taking my side, and I appreciate that. Even if you're not, I'm just going to assume you are. All right, Andrew. I think it's time for. You ready? Oh, he's getting wired up. So this is Tyler Welch. He's been patiently standing by, and he has another tip. So a couple of live streams ago, Tyler shared a really good Chrome tip with us, and he's back with another one. You want to go check out that other live stream to see his Chrome tip. I think it was live stream number 19. Tyler, what do you have today? And I'm going to follow along with you, I'm going to follow along as you tell me what to do. All right, so I got Chrome open here.
So tell them what the tip is, what we're going to do.
I'm going to show you how to customize the Chrome browser.
Okay.
So what's he got to do?
Open a new tab.
A new tab. Got it.
Click Customize down at the bottom.
Oh, I've never even seen that before. All right, customize.
Yeah, bottom.
Click it.
All right.
And now you can go to the color scheme down at the bottom.
Yep.
Color and theme, is that the one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And now you can switch to the top of the ball.
Click on one.
Okay. Let's see.
And you can make a custom one.
So is it just for this tab or is it for the whole browser?
The whole browser. And you can make a custom color too.
A custom color. Oh yeah, look at that.
And import a known color.
You got to speak up when you talk, okay?
I think that's it right there. It's what I want.
Put it back.
Press background.
Background, okay.
And now if you can choose section, any color section, like click on, scroll down. Press Alt, I guess.
Click on any one of those, Ryan. Click on art.
Art, all right.
You can click on it.
Yeah.
One.
Click one you like.
Hang on, let me find one I like. I'm a little picky. Let's do this one. Whoa.
Now it'll show up on the background, your Chrome browser every time you make a tab.
All right, so I'm
And
gonna
you
click.
can make.
Oh, go ahead.
If you go back to customize.
Yeah, go back to where you were. click on the category art again.
All right.
Now, if you press refresh daily, it will refresh every image every day.
So now hit save.
And you mean?
Ah,
Every day you'll get a new image from that category.
feel like I'm living in the 80s with Makefiles with this one. Wow.
And now, if you go back to customize,
Okay. Customize.
now you can upload your own logo.
Oh,
Yeah, so if you want to brand it with like CraftQuest or something, you got a CraftQuest logo you can throw up there?
let's see. I'm sure I do.
And if it's a transparent background, it will show up black.
Okay. Can I do like a whole
Yeah, you can
a whole
do any
image?
style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we are. It's a little small. It's a little pixelated, but CraftQuest on call. I probably should make it a little bit of a different positioning and stuff. That's
Yeah.
cool. You know what I'm gonna do
And-
is I'm not gonna drive everyone crazy with my red browser. So we'll fix that. All right.
He's got one other thing to show you.
Okay, go for
And-
it, Tyler.
On Mac, if you press Command, comma, to go
Uh-huh.
into the Chrome settings,
Yeah, or you can type Chrome : / settings.
Yeah.
Yep, there you go.
now scroll down until you go to appearance.
Let's see. Okay, appearance. Yep.
And now, if you click that open button,
This one right here.
yes,
Whoa. Oh, there's all these themes and stuff.
what people made in the Chrome Web Store.
All sorts of really nice pre-done themes for everything and everything under the sun that you can just pick and use.
Awesome. Very cool.
And saying that's
Okay, and lots of good comments here, Tyler. We're saying genius, fun, best part of the show, says Danny. It's about right. Cool. Thanks, Tyler, for sharing that. Let me. I don't know how I got back to red again. Let me see. Oh, there we go.
I think you have to press done to save it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep. Exactly. We'll leave my other image here. All right.
saying that's
Thanks, Tyler.
That's
Thanks for-
Tyler's tip.
All right. Thanks. That is. Andrew. We'll get Andrew back, and then we're going to talk about Andrew's make files.
All right, so everybody in chat, which is more interesting, Tyler's themes or Andrew's make files? I think I already know the answer. I think it's not going to be the make files, right?
Ah, you
It's
never
on a
know.
slight delay. Yeah.
All right, so
Oh, I'm
tell
pretty sure.
us, Andrew, a little bit about what came, like, how you came up with this. Like, what is the genesis of this whole make file thing that you built? Because I make fun of you for the make files, and I think I told you that I used to use rake files, right? Like for Ruby, is a Ruby version of make,
Yep.
to automate things just like on my computer. But how did this start for you, kind of using make files to automate things?
It started for me because for a number of clients as well as for myself, I build a number of infrastructure things like the Docker setup, the Webpack build process, all this kind of fun stuff. But when you're onboarding people to use whatever system you have, you want it to be as easy as possible. You want to give them just a couple of commands. They shouldn't need to know what the plumbing is under the hood in terms of how things work. You just should have a simple CLI API to do the thing, to start the thing up, you know?
Yep.
So for instance, even though it's relatively easy to type something like docker-compose up, that's kind of exposing people to the plumbing, you know, what's running underneath it. And maybe they don't need to know that, you know? And I've long done things like this. Like I had at one point I had a custom CLI called NYS setup that I used to use that would do various things. Well, and I wrote that for myself though, right? I didn't write it for anybody else. I wrote it to automate things for myself. But I was like, you know what? I really would like a more generic way to do this. And I don't want to write a custom CLI. I don't want a whole bunch of shell scripts that are sitting there that people have to make sure the permissions are right on
Mhm.
before they'll execute and all that other kind of lovely stuff. I just want a simple way to do it. And Make is there. So Make has been around since 1976. It is the OG of build tools, and it literally is for making stuff. That's why it's called Make, right? And
It does. I mean, Make is probably in software that you use every day.
everything that is on your computer, like the
Yeah.
operating system, is all built with Make. And even a lot of lower level developers are not often messing with these too much. I mean, if you're a kernel level developer or that level of operating system developer, then you might. But a lot of the automated tools that people are using will spit out a Makefile just as the process of building the stuff, you know?
Right. So you have in the dev mode project, I've cloned it. I'm in the master branch, and there's this Makefile here.
Yep. And
so
let's
this
make
is
sure
kind
you
of
don't
like-
have anything running. Do you have anything running in another tab? I think you might.
Just the containers.
Yeah. So let's control
Shut them
C
down?
and let's kill that. Yeah. Let's kill that.
But I just wanted to so if we just look at this is basically the recipe file for all these things, right? Or you're
Right.
You're creating a series
And people
of
look at
aliases.
this. People look at this and they get scared. I don't know what all this gobbledygook is, but it is actually relatively simple. So
Yeah.
the command on the left, like where you see where it says build,
Right.
that is what's called the target. Okay. And typically with Make, that is either going to be a directory or a file, right? So let's say it's a library that you're compiling, right? So you might call it, foo.o is your library or whatever. And the way that Make works is that if that thing doesn't exist, then the recipe is what tells it how to build it, right? So if you look to the right of build, you see how it says up.
Yep.
So anything to the immediate right of a target are the prerequisites, the things that need to be built or need to be there first before anything else can happen. So in this way, you can set up the dependencies, and also it will not rebuild the target unless one of the prerequisites has changed, right? So why rebuild everything? And then so if you actually scroll down in this file, you'll see that there is a target called up. So what's going to happen is if you type make build, it's first going to run the prerequisite, which is up.
Got it.
Right? So this is just a shell script, and it basically just says, is this Docker container running? If not, do a Docker compose up. And so that's just ensuring that our containers are running before we do anything else. Because one of the things that I had noticed in people using some of the projects that I had made is it was a little confusing to people in terms of, they wanted to build it, then it would get an error that certain containers weren't running, all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to make it super easy so that it would make sure that these things were up and running. Anything that was needed would be up and running before you do it. Anyway, let's go back up to the top and let's look at those. Look at this stuff again. Look at the build again. So build is the target, up is the prerequisite. So when I type make build, it will first run whatever the up recipe is, and then it's going to run the recipe part, which is the stuff below it. And all these are lines of code, lines of shell script, and it will just run them, right? So that you can have as many as you want. In this case, all it's telling...
If you've written in a package.json file, if you've written in, like if you have a scripts block and you've written, you try to automate, it's basically the same thing. You can refer to other commands as well and kind of bundle things together.
It's very, very similar. The main difference is, so for instance, on my computer, I don't even have NPM installed on my computer. It doesn't exist on my actual computer. Make is already pre-installed. And so it's there for me to use and I can just use it. Instead, I run everything inside of Docker containers. And the same thing with Composer. Like it's not even on my machine. But what this lets me do is this lets me make a really, really simplified interface that I can tell people, okay, when you want to get started to use this project, you can go ahead and exit out of this.
What do you want to, so what's the option that we're going to, or one that we can run and show everybody?
So to get for any of my projects, to get it up and running, you just type make space dev to make a local dev environment. Make
So
dev.
I cloned the
That's all.
repository. And this is what I did, right? I cloned it,
Yep. Mhm.
and then I can just run make dev. I'm a new developer on the team. Andrew just hired me to count his lines of code by hand, and
That's
I'm
right.
pulling the project down.
And the whole point is you don't have to know how it works under the hood, right? So
Right.
right now I'm using my own custom Docker thing. If I decided to switch to Nitro, then I could still keep my make dev because that's what my team knows how to get the thing up and running.
Right.
But I can just switch out the underpinnings.
Yep.
And in addition, if there are extra steps that need to be done or need to be tacked on or whatever, then I can just add them. And they won't have to know that. They won't have to remember that they need to do all these things. You know what I mean?
All they know is the aliases, basically, essentially, or the make commands. They don't really. And you also get out of that situation where it's like, oh, did you run this before you ran that? Because it's only one thing. It reminds me a little bit of, speaking of Git earlier, with like Git ls files. So that's actually I think they call that a plumbing command. So in Git, there's two layers. There's the plumbing commands, and then what they call the porcelain commands. Think about it as a toilet, right? The part you sit on versus the part that does all the work. That's the actual, that's not my terminology, it's what they use. But there are tons of commands that are chained together for, like, Git clone is a series of commands that are chained together behind the scenes in a bash script or in a make file, who knows. I cover that. I have a course called Git Under the Hood, where I basically uncover all of that. But it's a similar thing. Let's just give people the nicer commands to run and hopefully eliminate as many problems as possible. And I think what you're getting after too is, like, it's just more predictable. Every time I run it, I know what's going to happen.
And it allows me to switch things out and change things without having to worry about what is going on under the hood. And the people that are using my stuff don't ever have to know what happens. So right now the project is up and running. So if you wanted to connect, you would just go to localhost 8000.
Look at my new tab. See that?
Looks nice.
There it is.
There you go. All right. So now go back over to your shell. And in the new tab, you already have a new tab over there.
Yep.
So for instance, let's say you wanted to build the production assets for this thing. You would just type make build.
That's it.
And you don't have to know what has to happen in order for this to work, right? It will do the thing. If I switch out Webpack for Vite, or if I switch out Webpack for Snowpack, you don't have to know. Like, it makes no difference to you what the thing is. You just know that you just have to type this and it will do the thing, right? It'll make the thing happen. And effectively what make allows us to do, it allows us to have local project specific aliases to do the things that we need it to do, right? So whenever you type make, it looks in the current directory for a make file, which is basically just a recipe for building stuff. And then it uses it. And it allows you to make things really, really nice. Like I have this set up so all of my plugins also use a containerized build system. So I just type make dev to spin up each plugin's container to do when I want to do the HMR and all that kind of stuff, and I'm doing the plugin development. And I also have that plugin development environment that we've showed off here before. Everything, same thing. You just make dev, fire it up, and away you go. You know.
I like it.
And I admit this is a little bit esoteric, but I also think it's kind of interesting. Well, I think it's kind of interesting.
I don't think it's that esoteric, though. I think that the idea that we can that we have, like, real basic tools like make, and that we can grab those, and, like, the stuff that you're doing in the make file isn't super complex, right? I mean, you have some knowledge, but it's not that you're writing 1,000 lines of code to make this happen. And when I was using rake files, which is the Ruby version of make, I was doing it for automating, like, local things, like just things on my computer. And I think anytime you can learn how to script, I think everyone should have at least some basic, like, bash scripting skills. I think it's important to know how to pull all those things together, how to pass in arguments and act on them and all that. So I think it's cool. If they can pull it down, I guess it's on GitHub, right? The dev mode repository. It's with the sample, like
Well,
you have that published live for everybody to see.
yeah, there's an article that we can link to on
Yeah.
automating with make and make files. So we'll link to that article. And
Okay.
also, yeah, I mean, you can just pull down the dev mode or the plugin development, either one of those repos. They use it. You can pull it down. I think that it solves a couple of problems. So if you are working on a team, this lets you set up a nice custom API for your team, a simple API for people to get it up and running. So you can have a designer that knows a little bit of HTML. You can just tell them just type make dev and it'll work, like simple commands to get it up and running. The other thing is this claws back to what we were talking about before, the person that was trying to set up their own development environment locally from a production site that they're pulling it down.
Right.
And one of the things I mentioned is, I think the problem they might be running into is they don't have a automated, predictable recipe that does the stuff, And when you make an API like this with a makefile, you get everything right once. And then you never forget, oh, I was supposed to type that before I typed this. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I can't type make build until I have the containers up and running. Like, you just don't have to worry about it because you get the automation part done once, and then you reap the benefits of the automation. And I'm someone that I will, as you can tell, Ryan, I will put in the effort up front to build an elaborate system just so I can be lazy and never have to, I want to solve the problem. And I just never want to have to deal with the problem again. I want to be done with it. I want the problem to be over with, and that's it.
I have to say, and I don't want this to go to your head, but I do think that and what Luke just said about in the chat, I'm actually about to say, is that I actually do really like this use of make, if only because it makes all of the stuff that you've put together for your Docker setup more approachable and easier. So I think it's kind of nice, honestly. I think it's kind of nice. Luke says that he loves the use of make, especially since your machine doesn't need PHP, Composer, et cetera, to build the app. Everything's always in containers anyway these days. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously where we're going. Nitro, like your whole point, like Nitro, you could replace that under the hood with Nitro, and then it works. Maybe that's what I'll do. And
I've got, Ryan, I've got limited capacity in this dome, right? So
Yeah.
I just want to solve the problem once, know that problem is solved, and then put it aside so that I can work on the thing I want to work on. You know what I mean?
No,
and
totally.
That's why I put in the effort to do it this way.
The focus should be on the sort of the important work, the deep work that's important to us, whoever, whatever that work is, whether it's, coding plugins, napping in your beanbag chair, like whatever the important work is for the day, that should be what we're working on. Alfredo said, I love this type of scripting automation. It saves tons of focus energy. Yeah, exactly. That's
Exactly
the point. So
it's just stuff you can clear out of your brain. It's not nagging at you. Yep. And it's one of those death by a thousand cuts. If you have like a series of commands you have to type all the time, it's death by 1,000 cuts, having to do that all the time, or sometimes forgetting to type this one, or sometimes forgetting to type that one. You know what I mean? For me, it makes my life easier.
It does. It's kind of nice, I have to say.
So Andrea is saying, you could use this for a craft starter project in Nitro. You can use it for anything. That's the whole point, is you can use it. It can make the underpinnings or the machinery that your system uses can be anything. And it kind of can abstract that away into a very simple list of things. And I thought of this on air, that something I should add to every one of my make files is make help. Like that should be a target. So anyone can type make help, and it will just spit out a list of the things that you can type in there. Right now I have that spelled out in the README, but that's totally something that I could put in there. So anyone goes to a project, they don't know what they can do, they type make help, and it can spit out the make commands that they can type.
Yep. And Danny says, I guess this avoids having to look up what the scripts are in package.json, as they can be different from project to project.
Yeah, that's another way to do it. And again, I don't run my scripts locally anyway. So I would need something to get into the container that is running the
Right.
thing. And then you'll run stuff like docker exec -it dev mode _php1 container, and then the command, and it just ends up getting really old. Like, you don't want to type that all the time. You would much rather just have make dev or make build or some really simple thing that gets you into the right container and does the thing. And that's why there is also a make craft command. There's a make npm command, and it will run all of those things in the right container. There's a make composer command that will run composer in the container, and it just gets you in, and it will do the right thing no matter what's going on under the hood.
Awesome. That's a good tip. Check out, I'll put a link in with the show notes for this to the dev mode repository, NY Studio 107 / dev mode on GitHub. Check that out. Go into the makefile and see what Andrew's put together, and then you can kind of trace back and figure out what he's doing. I think it's super cool. And I like that you're like your own makefiles now. I'm curious what's next. You're already
Old
at
school
makefiles.
cool.
Like, I'm 1 year old at this point. It came out in 76. I'm like 1. What's happening now? All right. And then you can invite multiple people and have them added to your team. So I encourage you to check that out. Lots of people interested in this, so it's exciting to see people start to learn with their teams. So check out craftquest.io/teams. So Andrew, that was a good live stream, I think, for us. You know, we knocked out some stuff. Next time I have some questions queued up that we didn't get to, but we'll do that. So thank you to Tyler for another edition of Tyler's tips. That was super cool. I now have a customized Chrome browser. That's super cool. And for everyone who joined us live and hopped in the chat, if you do have questions, you can go to craftquest.io/on-call. And there's a form there. You can submit there anytime. I queue up the questions. I pull from there. I pull from Stack Exchange. And when we can, we try to write back and go back into Stack Exchange and let people know the answers that we came up with.
And Ryan,
right.
after all the rickrolling that you did to me last week and all that kind of stuff, I just want to let everyone know right after this, I'm leaving to go get my second vaccine shot for COVID-19. So
Excellent.
I'm going from one prick to another.
And that's the most New Jersey, New York joke ever. All right. Yeah, you know, we got, because of the Rickroll thing, we now have custom composed intro and outro music, which we're going to go to now. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll talk to you all later. Bye.
Bye-bye.